Final check, test. Okay.
Doc Rivers continues to time and time again not get it when it comes to getting. Oh! Let him play!
Good evening, sports fans, and a pleasure to have you here back on Sandwich Sports as we cover another incredible Masters tournament. It's good to have you all here. My name is Dave Medina. You know me as Dave E's Eating a Sandwich on numerous social media platforms and here on this channel, which is our Twitch channel. It's nice to see you all back again. It's been a little bit since we've done sports. We last were covering the Sweet 16 round of the NCAA tournament. So with that said, big time congratulations to UConn, who ultimately breezed through the tournament. It was actually rather easy for them, but we kind of roll in from that. We rolled into pro golf, and we had a really awesome Masters tournament this over the weekend. Really great stuff. Jon Rahm, your winner. Really good things happening. So all of you who are in our chat tonight, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to talk some golf for a couple hours, and then we're going to raid out over on Twitch and go find someone cool to hang out with after our show. And so let's first introduce our panelists of the evening. Mike will be on his way shortly, but John and Andy are with us on the call. So first, then, let us say hello. Then, give me a sec here. I'm going to do this whole thing. But let's go say hi to John first. John, good to have you back. How's it going tonight? Welcome in.
What's up, Dave? Andy, good to be back. Another major has come and gone, and we're here to discuss all the hot topics. So, should be an interesting night for sure.
Yeah, a lot of hot topickery, I guess you could say. Definitely a lot of storylines circling around this tournament. And you had the inclusion of LIV players in for the first time since LIV was instituted. You have really, turn back the clock moments from Phil Mickelson and turn forward the clock and away from Tiger. Let's go say hi to Andy as well. Andy, it's good to see you again. How's it going tonight?
Doing well, yeah. I'm looking forward to talking some golf. But first, just a little side note: Oh Baby and Fiddle can go straight to hell.
All right.
They think they know why I left Discord. What they don't fucking know. So we'll just leave it at that. They can fucking go to hell. But yeah, let's talk golf.
All right. Well, let us talk about golf. Mike will be joining us shortly. Let's get in. Let's go over to Jon, and yeah, I mean, I think the first thing we want to get into is Jon Rahm's performance. I mean, Jon started off with a really horrific round in the first hole. Oh, Mike's just joined us. Okay, great. So we'll say hi, Mike, in a second. But anyway, he came back from that, and he actually played really good golf from that point thereafter. It's kind of amazing what's happened. In pretty much the entirety of the weekend since then. Koepka was also great. He had the lead for a lot of the tournament, and there were many rain delays. The weather was wild. The trees were getting knocked over. It was getting kind of crazy. And we will go over to... Let's go say hi to Mike. Mike, it is good to have you back on the show. Welcome to our next season of Masters recap shows. Mike, it's good to have you back. How's it going tonight?
Good, Dave. Thank you for having me. I apologize for the technical glitches I had logging on today. I guess my work life is now following me home because that's what I deal with all day at work. But it's good that we got it figured out.
Okay, no, absolutely. It's good to see you again, Mike. But Zoom can be pesky sometimes, technology-wise, especially if you hadn't used it for a while, and that does happen to all of us, I'm sure. So let's just stay with you for a second. Let's talk about the journey of this Masters tournament. A very good tournament, even though it was pretty much decided around the turn on Sunday because Koepka just could not hit a birdie to save his life for the meat of the final day, and it was kind of a very disappointing ending. But certainly, just to see him in the mix again it was really a sight to see. But same thing for Jon Rahm, really good stuff. And then Phil Mickelson tied for second, which he had some extraordinary shots. It was kind of remarkable to see that he could still do that at his very, very advanced age for a golfer. But Mike, we'll give it to you first. Get your takeaways from just kind of your look at Rahm's big victory, and then what he did to get there. I mean, there's just so much to unpack. So I'm just going to give you the floor instead, so you can help us unpack everything that happened over the weekend to start.
Sure. So up front, before I go any further, just for full clarification purposes, I had money on Brooks Koepka outright to win this tournament. I was watching this very much with a vested interest.
Wow.
But listen, I've watched enough golf in my life to know that having a 4 or 5 stroke lead when not everyone's completed the second round doesn't really mean that much. And then when Rahm, followed up his good first round with another good second round, I thought to myself, well, we're going to have a battle here. And, even though Koepka won week before, I knew Rahm wasn't going to be going away because, as we alluded to the last time we were here for the Players' Championship show, he's been off to, frankly, a historic start to his season. I believe now he is... Well, Scotty Scheffler did it last year, but him and Scotty Scheffler are like 2 of only 3 people ever to have 4 calendar year wins by the time they've gotten to the Masters. So, yeah, like you were alluding to, Dave, it was a strange tournament just in terms of timing with everything. We knew that was going to be the case going in. In fact, I would say we were pretty lucky that they got the tournament in on time. Much of that is really due to just the crazy technology they have at Augusta National with the sub-air systems on the greens, able to dry everything out. And luckily, no one was hurt when those trees came falling down. But if we're going to go leading into the final round, really, they start that third round, and we'll get into what happened with the coverage, I'm sure, later on, because that was a disaster, what happened, where it's strange, because the Masters has not had a misstep with anything in years, and they had a big one here. But putting that aside, when we resume the third round, it starts off right away with this 2-shot swing, and Rahm is able to get 2 shots closer, and it stays close up until then. And Koepka goes into the final round with a lead, but not a huge lead, not anything that we know what can happen at Augusta National. People can get hot, people can shoot low scores. So nothing really that was overwhelming or anything that would necessarily require a choke not to come through. But you could tell right away that Koepka was off because you look at his first drive. The first drive, that thing went off at like almost a 45-degree angle left. Like that's my big miss in golf now is just the dead pull fairway wood or driver that, you know what, like I literally see the thing launch 1 second and I'm reaching for another ball. That's basically what happened. But because he had a whole nother fairway next to him, that's where he landed and he was able to get on the green. But, you know, Koepka was not right because he has the driveway left on one. On two, he hits a great drive, but he puts his second shot in the one place on two with your second shot where you cannot put it to the Sunday pin, which is short and right because you have no green to work with. He's not able to make birdie there. Then on three, to again show you that he's off, okay, he puts his drive and his pitch in a decent place, but his putt was nowhere close there. And then he runs into that stretch into the bunker, makes bogey. He's not able to get up and down off of six. Now, those were tough holes. And really, I think that was the big critical stretch there because Rahm did not get off to a particularly great start either. Missed the green at one. He was not able to birdie two. He hit his driveway right. He makes a nice birdie on three, but really where Koepka started to leak oil, Koepka leaked oil in what is a difficult part of the course, 4, 5, and 6. 4 obviously is that 240-yard par 3 that destroyed Phil Mickelson's chances in 2012 or 2013, I believe. 5, we know about it's a 500-yard par 4 with a crazy green. And then 6 with that Sunday pin up on the knob in the back right. That's difficult too. And what Rahm is able to do is he's able to get through that stretch of holes 4, 5, 6, par, particularly on 5 and 6, with the long lag putt on 5 and then another long lag putt on 6. So that was important. And then just Koepka, the wheels just start coming off. And also where Rahm was, and by the time it got to the back nine, Rahm is ahead. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, he's going to have to make a mistake now for Koepka to get back in it. And the places you can really make mistakes, 10, 11, 12. And he's able to get through that all right. And then he gets his second shot just left to the green on 13, makes birdie there, makes a really nice birdie on 14, which can be a tricky hole because it bends a little bit to the left, but the fairway shoots off to the right. And that doesn't really shoot Rahm's shot shape, but he's able to, from the first cut of rough on the right, hit this like low chippy wedge that gets to a few feet, makes his birdie, and away we go. And yeah, Koepka he made some birdies on a back nine, 13 and 15, but it was too little too late at that point, and he wasn't able to stave off the bogey. So, yeah, just a very solid performance by Jon Rahm. It's something where if you want to be honest about it, like he played a good round of golf on Sunday, not a great round. It's something where, you know, if the one guy who was there with him had brought his A game, where maybe it wouldn't have been enough to win. But, you know, that's why we play multiple rounds of golf, 3 rounds on Live, 4 rounds on PGA Tour. What may it be? It's really about putting together all of those holes. It's not about what you do necessarily in one round. And where Rahm really won this was the very good performance over the first 2 rounds, and then having to complete the round in those terrible conditions in the morning with the cold and the rain. He was able to hold it together, unlike Justin Thomas, who completely imploded. He kept that's really what won him the tournament there, was persevering through those difficult conditions and ensuring that it was going to be himself and Brooks Koepka separating themselves for the field, where really then all you got to worry about is, well, I just got to be a couple strokes better than this other guy. And that's what he did. In fact, he was 6 strokes better. So a very nice win for Jon Rahm. He is now the first player from Europe, I believe, to have both a Masters and a U.S. Open, which is, I heard that and I was like, oh, that seems almost hard to believe, but I guess it's true. Faldo never won a U.S. Open. Seve never won a U.S. Open. So, for a guy who Rahm basically he came onto the scene in 2016, he immediately started contending in tournaments. He won very early on in 2017, but you know what? Then it took him a few years to win a major, and we're kind of wondering, well, when is this going to happen? But, he's answered the bell here with that U.S. Open win at Torrey Pines 2 years ago. He had a uncharacteristically poor performance in the majors last year for whatever reason, but he bounces back and captures a green jacket. Now, the fourth player, from Spain to do so, which is a somewhat remarkable stat. So, impressive win, and really, the sky's the limit for Jon Rahm right here. It seems like this year that he's found this extra gear. 4 wins already. He's going to go to a revamped Oak Hill, which should suit him much more so than Oak Hill would have suited him 10 years ago before this restoration. And then LA Country Club seems like it'll be a big hitter's park too. So, he's got a chance to win multiple majors here. I really think. In fact, I may put a wager on that. I'll see if any of the books will allow me to just say Rahm to win one of the next 3 majors, because I think that'd be a solid bet.
That's pretty good. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And he's definitely he's still kind of at the pretty young, like you said. Like, he's not that old at all. I think he might be, what would you say, early 30s, Mike? Mid 30s?
No, he's not even that old, Dave. He's in his mid to late 20s.
Wow.
He's like 26, maybe 27.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, he's just getting started. That's crazy. Well, John, let's bring it to you. Let's get your thoughts on Rahm's performance. It obviously was there's a lot of great things happening for Rahm on this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he starts off the tournament with a 4-putt on the first hole, and I'm just kicking myself for not going on to the sports book and betting him at, his odds probably dropped from 8-1 to 16-1 or something after that first hole. And, as soon as he, picks up his play, he recovers and then ends up shooting 65. He plays 9 under from that point. The value on the bet was gone at that stage, but he just played really solid golf all week, and that's what he's been doing all year. I know we'll get to some of the disappointments after, but the difference between Rahm and Scheffler and McIlroy is that McIlroy has such a low floor, he can shoot +5 easily, whereas Jon Rahm and Scotty Scheffler, Scheffler's the perfect example. He had nothing really on the greens all week. Really didn't play that well at all, and he still was, up 4 or 5 under by the back 9 on Sunday before the little par 3 got in. And that's the same thing with Rahm. His game is so good right now. He's just going to be in contention every single week. He tees it up. He's long and straight off the tee. He's got incredible touch around the greens, and his putter, he's just so clutch. With the mid-range putts that you need to make to save par, especially at Augusta. And you saw that numerous times over the weekend. And I thought one of the things where he kind of gets himself into trouble, and we've seen it in the past, is his attitude really gets himself down. If he has a bad hole, if a bounce goes in the wrong direction, he'll lose his shit basically, and it could completely just take him out of his mind and out of his game. And that didn't happen this week. When I saw the reports of the horrible weather conditions, I'm like, oh man, this might not be great for old Jon Rahm if he gets to play in some bad conditions. But he sure proved that he could handle it mentally, and especially too after that first hole on Thursday. Another perfect example. He could have in the past tournaments, he might have just shot 4 over and just gone home at that point. But he persevered, and once he got into contention, He was the guy to win. I know Koepka was playing really well. You saw jokes on the internet about how, maybe he thought he was waiting for the green jacket after the 54th hole, because that's all he does on live every round.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then he couldn't handle the 4th round because he hasn't played a 4th round in so long. Same with Nance. He was cracking me up saying, oh, hey, look, there's Brooks's ball in the CW. I mean, the crosswalk, referencing how live golf is, obviously on the CW. So Nance was throwing shade too, even, indirectly. But, Yeah, I don't know what else can be said about Rahm's performance. Clearly, I think him and Scheffler are just going to go back and forth with majors. And of course, there's other guys that can sneak in there and win one, but those are the two guys to beat right now, just the way they're playing. And I agree with Mike. I could definitely see Rahm winning another one this year. He's just so good at the moment. So definitely good times for the game of golf to have top players just like dominating like this. And I can't think of the last time like we had like a real long shot winner. I guess you could say Hideyama at Bay Hill was like the last really like kind of out of the blue winner on the PGA Tour. So you love to see the dominant guys and the top players contending each and every week.
It is really cool, and I thought Scheffler did all right too. I mean, he was not nearly he was not in the same in the top 10 or the top 5 at the end of the tournament, but he did all right. I thought he did okay. We will definitely get to surprise and disappointments later. Tommy K003, our friend Tom in New Jersey, asks, "How did you get the cool background, Mike?" We'll get to that in a second, but over to Andy first. What can you say about Rahm, Andy? I mean, anything you want to add as far as Rahm's performance and the final and the battle at the top?
Yeah, I mean, both those guys nailed it. This is why you don't take a temperature of a golf tournament 3 hours into round one on Thursday, because anyone that thought Victor Hovland was going to run away with it when half the field hadn't even teed off just needs their head examined. And Rahm had a double bogey on the first hole, and take away that double bogey, basically shoots like a 63 on round one. So, yeah, man. I mean, Rama Lama Ding Dong. He's a brute. Kepka's a brute. I was a little surprised, like, Koepka was just so flat that end of round 3, and as Mike highlighted, the start of round 4 with right at the start. It's not like Koepka like played like absolute crap. He just expected more. As Francesca tweeted, like, Koepka loves to talk. He kind of carries himself as like a third baseman, like Troy Gloss type, that he always feels like he's getting slighted. He's never gotten a good call from an umpire, and he just looks angry, and it just didn't work out for him. Rahm, as John mentioned, yeah, he's got a historic examples where he can kind of lose it, throw clubs, hothead Rahm, but he's kind of grown from that. What's strange about Rahm, he came out guns blazing with Hawaii and Los Angeles and Palm Springs. And that it was like, this is the year of the Rahm, this is the year of the Rahm. And then he withdrew from the Florida Players Championship with a tummy ache. He didn't play all that well in match play, although that match play format, it's really easy to not advance into the group of 16 because of the way the format is. But, after those two tournaments, like, what's going on with Jon Rahm? And, everyone was like, myself included, was buying in on the Spieth Easter magic, and some of the other guys, Scotty Scheffler, he wants to get his, Chef Scotty Part 2. But Rahm, he elevated his game. You'd be foolish not to, think he's going to be in the mix in the U.S. Open in your backyard, Dave, in 2 months' time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would probably, if I were to bet, I would probably like lay low on Rahm in the PGA Championship and wait for LA Country Club, but maybe bet them both. I don't know, but what's funny, and I'm sure you'll talk about the weather, and we usually don't play the what if game, but I would be curious to see what would have happened, because it was a 4-shot lead. Rahm was down 4 shots when they called the round for the day on Saturday. It would have been interesting to see if this course wasn't completely saturated and they played. Obviously they didn't, so it's a hypothetical conversation. But I wonder what would have happened. And then I feel like Cantlay's snail tortoise play affected Koepka more than it affected Rahm. That's just my opinion. I feel like Rahm didn't let it bother him as much as Koepka, because both those guys play fast. And Cantlay, it's weird. Everyone's making this big deal that Cantlay's slow. It's like, where the hell have you all been for the last 3 years? Like, dude has been slow for not just Masters weekend, but it was definitely amplified on that final round on Sunday. But yes, the year of the Rom is back on schedule, and kudos to him for playing. Everyone's kind of giving him a little too much credit for playing the Heritage this week. I mean, you're only going from Augusta, Georgia, to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and you're getting all the nice amenities and the seafood towers and all the love. So let's take it easy. But yeah, good for him. He could have easily withdrew and just gone on a total bender, but he's competitive, and he'll be ready to play, tee it up tomorrow.
I like it. Yeah, I think the near future also does indeed set up really well for Rahm, so it's exciting times for him and his family. So let's go back to Mike. Yeah, where did you get the cool background one? But then let's talk about the rest of the field, including a great performance by Phil. So Liv did have a little bit of a little bit of magic in the form of Phil Mickelson, so that you had that at least. Tiger was a big old mixed bag. I'm sure we'll address that too. The weather was a big thing. So Mike, I'll give you the floor and talk about some of the other notables from the rest of the field.
So Tommy wants to know about my Zoom background. That's the riveting content we're providing to the listeners.
Tommy doesn't know where that is. He's not a golf fan.
Oh, okay. So right behind me, that is the 18th hole at Harbor Town, which is the course they're playing this week. So it's a place that's near and dear to my heart because I would go on vacation there all the time as a kid. So I've just chosen that. I figure it's a better background than seeing a recliner and shit strewn all around behind me. So it's for the benefit of the viewer. So, all right. So you wanted to talk about Liv and their week and that next, right, Dave?
Well, yeah. I mean, just a general thing about the rest of the field. I mean, Liv is definitely a big part of that. Liv did not do so well in this tournament, other than Phil. I mean, Phil time for second is really wild to me, but give him a lot of credit. He had some great shots. But anyway, I'll give it back to you for your thoughts on other folks in the field.
Well, I think there's a few things at play here. I think the big thing for Liv this week was not so much having three guys in the top 5 or top 6 with ties, but more so that we're seeing now that Koepka looks like he could get back to being, if not necessarily the guy that he was, close to it. Someone that could get in the mix and win another 2 or 3 majors. And if Koepka wins another 2 or 3 majors, he has 6 or 7. And that puts him with guys like Lee Trevino and Arnold Palmer and Tom Watson. And if you have a guy who stockpiles that many majors on your tour, that's a big get to have. So that's really what I think their big win was here, was that Koepka, because when Koepka went, it's like, okay, yeah, he's a big name, but he's got all these injury problems, and it looks like his confidence and maybe his interest in the game is completely shot. But I don't know. Now it looks like he's back to being one of the top players in the world. And, he'll only really play against, besides the Dustin Johnsons and Cam Smiths of the world, 4 times a year. But if Liv has a guy like that, that's a good draw for them. As for Phil, yeah, I don't know what to make of that. He's been doing absolutely nothing on Liv since it started. He hasn't really done much of anything since the 2021 PGA. But listen, what can you say? The guy shot 7 under for his round, and he shot, I think he was even par after 5, so -7 through his last 12 holes to get a tied for second. He now has 12 second place finishes in majors. That is second to only Jack Nicklaus. That's he rang off like another check mark for an incredible career. And when you want to evaluate him where he stands all time, even though he really didn't have a realistic chance to win this is another feather in the cap towards making that argument, or putting forth a strong point for him. One of the weird things about the dynamic this week, and I will be very interested to see what it will be like in Rochester next month, because you almost felt like this sense of calmness for the first time about this whole PGA Tour live split. Now, I'm not sure if that's because the players feel that there's this sense of stability for the first time, that we kind of know who's gone to live and we kind of know who's going to be sticking around, and not so much is up in the air right now. I don't know if it's that, or it's so much that, hey, this is the Masters and we know for the sake of the tournament and whatnot, this all has to go on the back burner. Because it really did for the first time. I mean, absent like, Nance making comment, but so what? It says he's on the CW. Okay, everyone gets a big chuckle. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see what the vibe is, what the talk is about Live versus the PGA Tour at the PGA Championship, to really weigh in more, to really sort of answer that question, because I don't know what the answer is. I'll tell you what I do think helped Koepka a little bit. One of the things that came out this week, which is pretty interesting, is that it seems like Koepka, for whatever reason, I guess because he had a good rapport with a lot of the bigger name players, has remained on very good terms with guys like Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler and whatnot. They're practicing together all the time in Jupiter and discussing what's going on with the rollback of the golf ball. So I don't think Koepka went into this tournament with any sort of like awkward feeling, or feeling like, hey, people are peering at me, they don't want me here. He's like, no, I've remained friends with these guys. We play together all the time, so the awkwardness is gone. So, but yeah, we'll see where this goes. I think the biggest takeaway, again, as I said, was that it looks like Koepka's back to being a top player in the world, which is a boon for Liv. But we'll see what happens with Liv going forward. They really got to improve the television ratings. They're atrocious. I mean, I think they'll have a good week in Australia because that is very much a big golf place and they don't get major events. So I think you will actually see like good crowds at a Liv event there, but it probably won't do anything on the TV here. So, listen, they should get a boost off of this, off of Koepka's performance. And then I think people tune in maybe to the next Live event, if it's not during the middle of the night, whichever the next one is, that's not going to be that, to see Phil based on what he did. But I think a somewhat better than expected week for them, considering that they haven't had a good few weeks leading up to the Masters this year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We were talking about that the last time we were together. Like we got into some of the struggles that the Live have been having recently. So really interesting stuff there, Mike. Thanks for breaking that all down. I mean, and Andy, we'll give it to you for anything you want to punctuate as far. Oh no, actually, we should go to John first. Excuse me. We'll go to John next, and your thoughts on the rest of the field. And there is a lot to talk about here. Everything from Live players, to Tiger, to Rory, to anybody, to many different players we can get into, and we will do surprises and disappointments in the next segment. But John, your thoughts on other notables from the rest of the field.
Yeah, I mean, Liv, they had a decent week, I guess. I mean, Koepka was right there. Mickelson, obviously, I literally had no expectations for him coming in. Like, he was one of the last players I would have thought would have made he wasn't in contention to win, but like if you had told me before the week Phil Mickelson coming in second place, like I would have laughed in your face, because he had done nothing. Like Mike had said on Live Golf, he's just been playing so terrible, which kind of leads me to believe one of the theories that I had is just like those tournaments are essentially meaningless to these guys and just like practice. Basically, they're getting paid regardless. They're just showing up and just kind of half-assing it. That's why you're seeing guys who actually care to win. Like, we saw Brendan Steele and Danny Lee and Charles Howell like winning these Live events, and you're not seeing DJ or Koepka or Phil or Cam Smith win because they don't really give a shit. They just want to show up and play well in the majors. And a few Live players did do that. Patrick Reed with kind of like a backdoor top 5 finish. I thought he would play well. Actually, he had been doing okay on Live Tour, so not surprised to see him up there. And he had his 4 Aces gear, hat, and shirt, so I'm sure that made a lot of people happy. But a good performance from them, but I don't think it's really going to help in terms of are people really going to run to watch Live in the next event? I think it kind of sucks for them. The next event is Australia. I think they might have gotten some more viewers if it was in the U.S. I think they're playing in Oklahoma the following week. I think if they had flipped the events and like the Oklahoma event was next, they might have gotten some more viewers. But I think playing in Australia overnight is just going to be buried on TV. Like I agree, the crowds will probably be pretty good, but no one's going to tune in because no one knows where to find it or when to watch. But yeah, so I mean, okay from live in terms of guys performing, but I don't think they're really going to get a huge boost from this. In terms of other players, I mean, I guess we'll get to it with the surprises and disappointments, but just a completely just disgraceful performance from Rory McIlroy. And like I said before, his floor is so much lower compared to the other top players. Like, yeah, when he gets his A game going, he can compete with anybody, but he just got it going in the wrong direction and he couldn't do anything. And he played in the good weather conditions too, the better of the two ways, and he still shot like 5 over. So that was just really disappointing. You're still seeing, you're seeing good performances from Victor Hovland and Cam Young. Wins are coming for those guys soon. So I think I'm going to keep on betting them here as we go forward. Same with Sahith Theegala. He had like the Tiger-like chip in on the 16th hole. We're going to be seeing some more of him. I think he's going to win here at some point this year. He's getting very close. And then I guess just one point on the weather. I think they planned it out well in terms of the Saturday. Obviously, the coverage was complete shit, but the tournament directors or schedulers, they did enough on Saturday in order to get in a full round, or I'm sorry, in order to get to the finish on Sunday on time. So I think that was the entire goal for the start of the day. Like, all right, we're going to play in this shit weather for like 6 holes, just enough so we know we can finish the full event on Sunday, because the last thing they wanted was a Monday finish. So they were going to push through to get enough golf in on Saturday in order to accomplish that. And unfortunately, it was pretty miserable out there for most of the players. And I kind of wish they had kept playing to see what would happen if they had to play 18 holes in that cold rain and wind. But that's how it goes. They did just enough to finish, and we got our usual Sunday. It was a full Sunday of golf. You got up at 8:30 a.m. You watched the end of the third round, and took a little break, made Easter with the family, and then you watched the fourth round. So yeah, they planned it out well in terms of how they did the weather situation.
Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised that they were able to get it in on time, even started on time. I was like, because we've seen past Masters where because of rain they would start the final round coverage really early. They clearly couldn't do that this year because they still had to play pretty much the majority of the third round within the day and the fourth and the final round. So all things considered, they really managed really well around that weather. I know Mike has thoughts on this as well coming up. Thank you for mentioning Theegala. Theegala had a great day. I did love the it looks so similar. That chip on 16 looks so similar to Tiger's chip on 16 in 2005. The same roll. The only thing it was missing was like the hanging off the cup and then going in. Boy, what just a great shot. He also had a really good shot in 4, which I don't know if you guys saw, but during the bonus coverage, on ESPN Plus, they showed him just basically chip it right next to the hole. I was like, wow. That was great. And when you see how like everybody else was kind of struggling with that hole, particularly Koepka and Rahm later in the day, it really shows you how good a shot that was. So, Andy, let's give it to you. Anything you want to add as far as the rest of the field? And then we'll do surprise and disappointments after.
Yeah, like in regards to being able to finish on Sunday, yeah, that was fortunate. The smaller field helps, compared to a regular tour stop or even a regular major. The field's a little smaller. The fact they were able to get off the final round in twosomes with the help of split tees, that was definitely a factor. So yeah, it was great that we could all get it all finished by Sunday, because a Monday finish on a Masters would have just been absolutely painful from a first world problem standpoint. Mickelson's performance was kind of wild. The one of my classmates, I did a podcast last week with an old classmate of mine and another classmate of mine who was actually she won the big break in 2006.
Wow.
Trump National. Yeah, she played on the LPGA and then the Symetric Tour before it was called the Symetric Tour, and she didn't win, but she didn't win anything on the tour. But she was at the Masters practice round with her husband, who's a pro in Orlando, a country club pro, and she was like, Phil looked like ass on the driving range, and even it's not like he was trending at all in any of the live events. Like he wasn't piss poor. At least Koepka won the week before, but yeah, Mickelson. He's not doing much on the live events. But I don't know. There's something to be said about that golf course. We play it enough times. Like these guys just can kind of meander their way around. And Mickelson definitely did that and then some on Sunday and Saturday and to get that, second place finish. So good for him. I mean, he's very gaunt looking. I don't know. I mean, the dude had like calves and you got a hard body a couple of years ago. Then he had tits 10 years ago. Now he looks like a skeleton. So, he goes through all different phases. But I know you want to talk about surprises and disappointment. So, but I'll piggyback on John's comments on Rory. Yeah, just a disgraceful performance out of him. I know this is the one tournament he needs to get the Grand Slam, and that 2011 Masters, I mean, I think it was an 80. It might have been 80. I don't know. It was a horrendous back nine, but I mean, he's got ghosts. He has some ghosts, and it's crazy because when he's on, he looks. He's got the most beautiful swing and tempo and rhythm, and he makes putts. And he's got the bounce in his step like Faldo used to always, talk about. And, for him to just kind of go out, absolute whimper was disappointing. And what's there to say? There's always next year, I guess. And there's always next year. But this is two majors, the British Open or the Open, like he screwed that one up. Cam Smith won, but Rory missed so many putts that day in St. Andrews last July. And I know he won the Tour Championship, so that kind of gets glossed over. But, everyone wants him to win that Masters, and he just it was very disappointing. I will say this about Hovland. So I bought a Hovland ticket at like 10-1 early Sunday morning. It was right before he went on that birdie tear. And, he'll win a major at some point, but he had a double bogey. I think it was on either the fifth hole. I think it was 5. I don't know. I don't have the scorecard in front of me, but it was early in his final round. He had a terrible chip. And he missed his bogey putt, and then he missed like a very short comebacker, and he just kind of never recovered from that. And but I think this type of experience will pay off in the long run. I think for him. I mean, he's won some big tournaments before. He'll be okay. He's just a baby. He'll be all right. Now, the thing that kind of bothered me about Phil winning and making that birdie putt on 18. I assume John and Mike were in these types of pools where you pick one player out of like the big dogs, which are like Rahm, Scheffler, and Rory. Then you pick 2 contenders. You pick one from like the old guys and the young amateurs, and then you pick like 2 journeymen. So you pick like 8 total golfers, and then you take the 4 best golfers of each day, and then at the end of the 4 rounds, you win or you lose. I came in second place out of 600 people, and the guy in first place who beat me by 1 stroke had Phil Mickelson.
Oh,
and and I had Spieth, so that was a big swing on 18.
wow.
And so, but yeah, second place still was nothing to kind of sneeze at, but it would have been cool to be number 1 at the end of the Masters tournament. Yeah, because I've never won any big pools like that before. But yeah, it was cool for Mickelson. Good for Fatty Reed. He's always going to grind out. he loves playing the heel, like as John mentioned, wearing wearing the four aces head to toe. But he's got the green jacket, so he'll be there forever. And yeah, I think that's about it in terms of live. I know you'll talk about disappointments and surprises. We can get into that, but yeah, I mean, uh, what else? What else can you say? Oh, about Spieth. I don't think Spieth was a disappointment or a surprise. I'll say this about Spieth: it was an entertaining 4 days out of him. I mean, he had a terrible Saturday round. A lot of people had terrible third rounds because of the weather and stuff. But even on the days where he shot like, 69, 70, he just had, but you get the whole package with Spieth. He makes the 40-footer, he misses the 2-footer, and he just had way too many bogeys in between, like a stretch of birdies to really kind of flirt with serious contention. Everything on Sunday, as entertaining as Spieth and Mickelson were, playing together on that Sunday, it was a little more of a sideshow, if that makes sense, because I don't think either were really in contention to threaten Rahm or Koepka for that matter. And Spieth just had too many bogeys. John and Mike could probably highlight a little better, but that's what you get with Spieth. He's just too loose, but that's what makes him fun to watch, because he can back up like a double with like an eagle, and it's just like Spieth, just a little more consistency, please.
But yeah, you're right, though. That's been his entire career. Mike, let's go back to you. It is now time for our surprises and disappointment segment. So there are many in both categories. Mike, I'll let you start us off.
Well, I'll just highlight three players here who I think deserve a little bit of our time. First would be Fred Couples, who became the oldest player to ever make the cut at the Masters at 63 years and change. So I think he deserves a shout out and some recognition for doing that. For a guy that's back is basically made out of tissue paper at this point, to be able to still hold it together and to be able to make the cut against guys 30, 40 years younger than him at an age where you're washed up even on the senior tour is very impressive. So kudos to him. I noticed a couple of years ago that he sort of like set a new goal for himself. He was like, I would just like to be able to win one more event on the Champions Tour and, see if I can still compete at the Masters. Well, he's done both of that since he did that. He won a Champions Tour event last year, makes the cut here, and it's good. It means that we probably haven't seen the last of him. So well done. Both John and Andy have touched on Rory, and yeah, there's not much else to say. That was nothing short of a pathetic performance. The one thing about him that totally mystifies me is that, as Andy pointed out, we know he has his ghost at Augusta, and that's one thing. But what the hell happened, and where did it happen, where he just gets so tight at these majors? He can't, even in the ones where he has good finishes, except for the Open last year, he just starts off flat and doesn't perform to his ability level. And the one thing that I have trouble like trying to square about that is what event along his career trajectory did this happen where he lost his confidence? Because it's not like there's an event other than the Open Championship last year, and these struggles well precede that, where like he had a big lead, or he was in the driver's seat, or he had a one-stroke lead on the 18th hole and he choked or threw it away. It did something that never happened. I mean, the closest thing to it is, I guess, the 2018 Masters, but with Patrick Reed, where he didn't play well on the last day and was within striking distance, but he would have had to like shoot 66 or 67 that day to win. It wasn't like he had the lead. So it's hard to figure out what exactly happened. Gun to my head, I just think he's a guy who thinks too much. You can pick up on it just in his interviews, how he speaks, how he handles himself. Sometimes you just gotta, almost take like the Bubba Watson or Dustin Johnson approach. You're just trying to hit a ball somewhere. Everything else out of your brain. Don't have another thought. So a very bad performance by him. I'll be interested to see what he can do at Oak Hill in Rochester. His wife is from Rochester originally. Maybe that'll get some good vibes or karma going. Although he did meet his wife while he was still dating Caroline Wozniacki, so maybe there'll be some bad karma that actually hits him there. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll be in attendance for that, so I'll give you guys a report on the festivities next month. So that'll be fun. Then one other person to talk about. We should talk about Tiger Woods because no, Dave, listen, he's an old guy now and he's hobbling around, so he's not as much fun to poke fun at anymore because
This is true.
You can tell he's playing from a disadvantage, but I mean a self-caused disadvantage. If he knew how to drive a car, he wouldn't be in this situation. It's true. What's he doing?
Listen,
we don't need to get into that.
We don't. You're right. You're right. You right times two.
We don't need to rehash that. But I almost wonder what's the end game here, because we're now like more than 2 years post this accident. We saw him come back last year and be able to make the cut at the Masters, be able to make the cut at the PGA Championship and have to withdraw, play terribly at the British Open, and did a nice job to make the cut here, but then he could barely walk in the third round. So if he's at the point where he really can't walk a golf course 4 days in a row, how much longer is he going to keep doing this? Because you figure there's been enough time now for him to strengthen his leg, strengthen the muscles around it. But after seeing that, he said he had plantar fasciitis. Well, listen, I'm not a doctor, but I would guess that he's getting plantar fasciitis because his gait is probably off because of the injury, and he has to compensate, and that leads to other problems with your feet, legs, joints, and whatnot. So I don't know how often he's going to keep playing if this is the case. I don't know if he can. It doesn't seem like the guy can walk 72 holes over 4 days anymore. It seems to beat him up too much. So I don't know how much more we're going to see of him. I think there was sort of an indication of, he came back and he played the Genesis, so all right, made the cut there. But then he didn't come back and try to play the Arnold Palmer or anything like that to warm up. But I wonder if sooner rather than later he just almost tanks this, other than trying to play the Masters once a year, and just says, you know what, I'll see you on the Champions Tour in a couple years where I can take a cart and do that a few times a year. Because if he can't walk, it just really looks like he can't actually walk enough or do the walking in order to compete. So it's kind of sad to see. Also, I will give credit to the Golf Channel on this. I'll give them credit. They did not lead up the coverage to this Masters endlessly talking about him and if he could win and this and that. They focused on other players, thankfully. That's good to see. That's more of a realistic view of where we are in the golf game. ESPN, on the other hand, after his round, they would they would have like the Sports Center at the Masters segment, which was really just a hybrid. They were kind of still covering the Masters. But then when they would switch to Sports Center, leading Tiger's round. What are you guys doing? What is the end game here? And you know what? To show that that's a faulty strategy, the Masters just posted the highest rating for any golf tournament in the last 5 years. Tiger Woods was not playing. You don't need to lead with Tiger Woods at every bit when he's not contending and he's nowhere near the lead. So maybe that's a good lesson that comes out of this, is that people are willing to watch golf when he's not part of this anymore. They've picked up on this new era of good players. And hopefully some of the Tiger fans who were only watching when he played have now been like, yeah, you know what? These guys ain't too shabby themselves. So, as for surprise and disappointments, that's all I got for you, Dave.
That sounds great, Mike. There is a follow-up to the ESPN angle I did want to touch on, because our friend Joey St. Louis made the point yesterday on the other streams we were doing. And he brought up Mike Greenberg criticizing Fred Couples' outfit, and I'm like, I just trying to figure out what that was, so I read into it. I'm like, did you have any comment on that at all? Because that seemed like a kind of a Sheeran thing to be complaining about.
that Mike Greenberg is bringing up that, of all things, is probably why he was getting absolutely demolished by Boomer and Carton in the ratings for all those years.
I love that.
Was it the sweatshirt?
Yeah, the sweatshirt.
It was cold. I mean, I did know. I was like, wow, he looks like he's wearing like a sweatshirt, like one of those Davo Sweeney type sweatshirts.
Right.
You like everyone from like 1995 used to wear.
Okay. I think that's a good place. I appreciate your thoughts on that, everybody. So, John, let's go bring it to you. Surprises and disappointments.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. We kind of talked about a lot of this within the other segments. I guess I'll give props to the amateur, Sam Bennett. Really great performance. I mean, you knew he was going to kind of fall off the pace, but to even be in contention for like 40-ish holes, pretty impressive. And he definitely has a future in the game. I don't know when he's going to turn pro, but he definitely has some game without a doubt. We kind of touched on the surprises at the top of the leaderboard. I guess the only other guy that, like, if you had told me he'd finish in fourth place, I would have really laughed in your face, is Russell Henley. Like, where did that come from? I mean, I guess anyone could have a hot, third and fourth round. I mean, he's a good iron player, but definitely did not expect that from him. 67, 71, 70 to finish. So that was pretty surprising. And then in terms of disappointments, I'll mention Jason Day, just because he got to 9 under on Friday afternoon. And I'm sitting here, I've been betting Jason Day for like the last month, because it's like, all right, the game is trending here. It's his time to break through again. And he's 9 under, going to the 14th hole on Friday, misses a short birdie putt. And then on the 15th hole, he puts it in the par 5. He puts it in the water with his third shot. And then that was just the end of him. He kind of hung in there for a little bit, but then just completely imploded on Sunday. He ends up finishing at +5 for the tournament, which was just disastrous. It was like 14 over from that point. Max Homa, kind of a disappointment, but again, we've talked about this with him before. He's really, he hasn't proven it in any majors yet. He can win in California, and he can win a couple other events, but he has not really contended in any majors. We'll see if that changes when the U.S. Open goes to California later this year. And then of guys that missed the cut that were a surprise, we already talked about Rory. And then I guess the only other guy would be Justin Thomas, but we kind of documented how he just kind of just really imploded and when that weather on Saturday morning. The only other thing I'll add, maybe we'll get to this with the coverage. I understand CBS, what they're doing with miking up the players, like on the 14th hole or wherever it was. But Nick Faldo had a really great point. Like, why are you doing that in the middle of the Masters? Like, if your focus is just trying to do like one shot at a time and focusing on the task at hand, which is trying to win a major, like, you should not be agreeing to be mic'd up. And I agree with that. Like, you want to do that at like the John Deere Classic, like, fine, I'm all for access in the game, but like, you as a player, I think that kind of takes your mind off the ball. And like, Thomas is just trying to make the cut, and like, they're in his ear, like, asking him about his iron shot. Like, I think it was just a bad idea for those guys to try to do that, or who accepted that invitation. But that's just my opinion. And he kind of fell victim to just some really poor play on that Saturday morning, and he missed the cut, which I guess is, because him and Rory were like really the only top players that missed playing on the weekend.
Pretty good summary, John. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think we go to Andy. Anything you want to add as far as surprises and disappointments, or did we get into that already? I can't even remember at this point.
No, I'll just fucking rattle real quick. Yeah, neither a surprise or a disappointment, but just a karma. People think karma doesn't exist, but DeChambeau, ever since he said Augusta's a par 67, well, he must have shot a 14 over then, because he's a couple of 74s. So maybe Augusta isn't a par 67. Maybe you want to have some more respect for that golf course, Bryson. So good for him. I guess a surprise and a disappointment would be that, and this is because of how steady Jon Rahm was. This is because he didn't get in any trouble on the 12th hole. when he could have, because we've seen a lot of people make a mess out of 12. But a surprise and a disappointment was that Amen Corner, the back nine on Sunday at Augusta, did not really provide a ton of ups and downs and drama and swings and twists and turns like it can. Even in a two-man race, the back nine can provide twists and turns. I mean, we saw it with Justin Rose and Sergio a few years ago, and then we've obviously seen it in a year like 2011 when there's like 10 guys that are taking turns with the lead. Just watch the 2011 Masters if you've got nothing to do one of these days for giggles, or even the 2016 one when Spieth was melting down and Westwood and Willett were taking turns with the lead. So that was a little bit of a both surprise and disappointment because, typically that back nine and the Amen Corner and 15 and 16 can offer all sorts of surprises, but there really wasn't a lot. But that's a sporting event. You're not guaranteed. You're not owed any of that. You're just grateful for being able to watch it, and you see what happens, and you take what you can get.
I hear it, Andy. I do. So basically, I guess there weren't as many surprises and disappointments as I anticipated.
Last thing about Sam Bennett,
okay.
And I know Mike pays attention to it. I don't know if John watches the amateur as religiously as Mike does, but I remember Mike tweeting about it, and Bennett's going to have to speed up his play. If there's one unintended observation from watching like the amateur year in and year out, whether it's at Bandon or last year when it was, I think, in New Jersey, like some of these amateurs, they take a long time. Like the whole pace of play in the younger generation it's a thing. And I guess he's got a little bit of anxiety issue, so that's why he like takes a little bit. But that was a little tough to watch. As impressive as his play was, I was like, dude, you got to get on with it.
Fair points, Andy. Definitely. So now let's address the elephant in the room of television and media coverage. And this is going to be the first time I've said this since we've been covering the Masters, and we've been covering the Masters for about a dozen years at this point. I'm maybe a little less than a dozen, maybe 11 years, but this definitely would be the first time I've said I was disappointed in the coverage in general. Basically, the scenario with the second and third rounds, I mean, that was strange to have only about a 15-minute broadcast for all intents and purposes, but they did make a point that they were going to try to replay actual coverage from earlier in the day so that they could fill that 4-hour time slot. So maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, but why didn't you just air it then? Why didn't you just air it when it was happening earlier in the day? I don't know, but there's that. And then the fluff that you tend to see, I mean, I was talking with our friends like Coach and Jacob Rosales Hunt about it in text, and we were like, yeah, some of this pomp and circumstance stuff is kind of getting old. Like the annual tee shot and all that. It's kind of like, we could just be watching golf instead of like getting to all this stuff all over and over and over. So that's kind of like where I was with it. I mean, I don't know. I just didn't feel like, I feel like we were kind of missing some of the great analysis we used to get. Some people have left. Faldo's left most recently. We used to have, I think we used to have David Faraday on the coverage, right? At one point in time we did. But let me go to Mike first on the TV coverage. I mean, you have better perspective on this than I would, but what did you think of the media coverage of the event?
Well, let's just address some things that Tommy is concerned about, because he brought up a number of things to me and to other people during the tournament that I think we need to address head on. I do not have I have a problem with what happened this week on Saturday. That should not have happened, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. But in terms of how the Masters is broadcast right now, with the limited television windows on both Thursday and Friday, I'm fine with. And I'll tell you why. Because realistically, when you think about what the advantage is to having the traditional broadcast on television, where they have, one feed and they're jumping around to players, is that allows you on the weekend to take the guys who are in contention and jump around to their shots so that you're able to follow the action in terms of who is in the lead, how things are shaping up, and how the event is ultimately going to unfold. And that's most critically on the weekend. On Thursday and Friday, what the Masters gives you is 2 featured groups and 8 holes of coverage on different feeds that you can watch from. And you have the ability to go on their app, on your phone. Background's knocking out my phone, but whatever. I was holding a phone there. And you can just click on a player, and it will show you every single shot they're hitting like 30 seconds after the shot is hit. You can more closely, I feel, follow the tournament, even if you were not allowed to watch any of the television coverage on Thursday and Friday than you can at a regular PGA Tour event. So that's why I'm okay with the limited television window. What they're giving you between the Amen Corner feed, the 15 and 16 feed, the 4, 5, and 6 feed, the featured groups, the shots for every player being up within 30 seconds. When you're not in a position yet where the tournament is coming down to, okay, we have the leaders and who's going to win, you can follow more of it with what they're offering to you than you could just watching a traditional broadcast. And with where we are today with technology, with everyone having smart TVs, and even if you don't, you can take an HDMI cable and plug your laptop into your TV and watch. To me, it's very easy to do. Now, I do get that there is this thing of active versus passive watching, and some people prefer passive watching, which is what television is. You don't have to like scroll through things and choose to watch something. You click a channel, it's there. I get that, but if you want to watch the tournament, to me, you can do so better even if there was no television coverage on Thursday and Friday. So that's why I don't have a gripe with it. I was sitting on a train coming back from work with my headphones in, watching on my phone, watching the television feed. They gave you the television feed on the Masters app for free over the week, and I think throughout the whole tournament. So who else is giving you that? But on the flip side, what happened on Saturday was an absolute joke. Now, here was the problem. I understand that they weren't going to move up the television window, but you cannot, under any circumstances, when you have a situation where 2 guys have separated themselves from the field by multiple shots, not include them as a featured group on the coverage. That can't happen. You're having critical events that affect the outcome of the tournament at that point happening, and they're not televised. They're not available to view in live real time. That can't happen. I don't know who made the decision to say Koepka and Rahm are not going to be a featured group. Tiger Woods is going to be a featured group. Whoever made that decision should be fired. What was the point of that? So that people would watch? How many people do you think watch the CBS feed at 3:00 on tape delay who wouldn't have watched it if they were able to see those shots live on featured group coverage? That's the only thing I can think of that possibly caused that to happen. So I'm baffled at this. For years, there were criticisms of the Masters, Hootie Johnson with the grandstanding about women, honestly screwing up the course a bit by throwing in 8 million trees. But once Billy Payne came in and now Fred Ridley has come in, they've done so many good things. And the launching of the app. And you know what? I heard a great thing about the app. Someone said the Masters app is the best app in the world. And they were like, why is that? It's basically only used once a week. How is that possible? And someone replied on Twitter saying, well, if you think about it, in every single app, in reality, the advertisers are the people that the app is targeted for. And the consumers are really, the product. Hey, we get X number of consumers, pay us this. The Masters app, on the other hand, is, look, they make a ton of money off their broadcast window, off merchandising and whatnot, but they don't try to actually maximize the amount of money they can make off the tournament. They're like, you know what, we're good with X. And once we get X, we're going to, from X, try to give you the best experience we possibly can. And that's why the Masters app is so good, because they're not trying to make all the money they can off of it. They're trying to give you the best experience you can have. So I'm just, from what the philosophy of the Masters tournament seems to be now, just trying to open it up, make sure that the app is the best thing possible. I'm just baffled as to what went wrong here. How you could have such a critical thing at that point of time in the tournament not be available to view live. To me, it's baffling. I don't get what happened there, and it really people were angry, and people were rightfully angry. They screwed up here, and I'm really not sure what went into the decision. It's baffling, it's dumb, and I wonder if it will happen again, because I do think that one of the things that pushed along all this coverage they have now and the ability to view things very quickly live was when Spieth in 2015, he was not in their coverage window on Friday, and he basically had booked the tournament by the time the coverage came on that Friday afternoon, and I think that changed things. Maybe the backlash here changes things. We can only hope.
Yeah, that's an egregious error. It's incredible to think that could even happen, especially in light of what you were talking about with Spieth. Like, you just think, do something to get them featured somehow, somewhere. It makes no sense. Mike, John, let's go to you and get your thoughts on the coverage as well.
Yeah, I can't add anything more than that. I mean, Mike did a great job there about the problem with what happened on Saturday. I don't know if CBS, how with the regular tour events, if there's a mix up with the schedule because of weather or whatnot. So I was like, all right, let's send the coverage to Golf Channel for the next 2 hours. Like, I don't know if CBS could make some kind of, or the Masters could make some kind of arrangement with Golf Channel or another station that is in that CBS family. I think Viacom still owns CBS. I don't know. I think that was the last time I remember who owns CBS. But regardless, another network in the family of networks, or like even on their streaming thing, Paramount Plus or something. Like, all right, down like the NBC's doing with Peacock, like download or go on there to watch this coverage, bonus coverage of the leaders. I think they could have done. There could be something done to make sure you don't miss that 2 hours. Like, there was 2 hours of play from the leaders. They teed off at 1:00 and they didn't come on until 3, and then 10 minutes later the coverage was done for the day, which was just complete horseshit, as has been documented. So yeah, that was just really bad. And if they had put those guys as the featured group, like, yeah, it would have been not great, but it's palatable. At least you could have seen the action live. So yeah, that was their one huge mistake of the week. And you can't move up the coverage because you'd be moving around the schedule all weekend for 2 hours. I know they did it on Sunday morning, but like they still had like the whole round to play. But for 2 hours, you're not going to do that. So maybe they'll look into getting like another outlet, like I had just mentioned, for this kind of scenario, or just put the leaders as the featured group. I mean, what's the harm in doing that? But I guess the other thing, the big kind of new thing this week was no Nick Faldo in the booth, and we had Trevor Immelman in his first Masters. And I guess what I could say about Immelman is I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's great either. He's just he has some good analysis. I mean, he was a former player. He won the Masters. So I think you have to respect what he says. Like, he was, trying to have some like funny banter with Nance and the rest of the crew. I mean, he's learning like the rest of them in kind of the lead chair. So I don't think he's 1,000 times better than Azinger. I mean, that's not saying much. He's definitely better than him, but I don't think he's quite as good as Faldo was, but maybe he'll get there. So I don't think it was a bad performance from him, but he let the golf, like, he wasn't the story basically. Like, he didn't say anything that made you go like, man, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, that's a really stupid comment. Like when you hear from Azinger like 100 times in the tournament. So that's what I would say about Immelman. And the rest of the crew, they are what they are. I noticed though that they used to have Dottie Pepper calling some of the holes, like from the tower, but she's now gracing us with her analysis on the course at the Masters. So that was kind of a new thing. I don't know how many she might have been on the course in previous years, but to me anyway, it was new for her to be on the grounds. And because they moved Immelman into the main chair, they kind of lost like one of the spots on the holes. So I think like Nopolo was doing 2 holes, and then you had Andrew Catalan doing 2 of the holes, and then Vern Lundquist. I mean, God bless him. I think he was more with it this year compared to previous years.
I
So
was gonna say the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, that was good to that was good to see, honestly, because he had really kind of been losing it in previous years, and he was definitely more with it this year, which I was happy about. So good for Vern. And then yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say, just kind of an interesting nugget. You guys mentioned like the opening ceremony with the pomp and circumstance and everything. That's kind of like the I don't know. It's like I know it's like the beauty of the Masters, but it's just like no other tournament is going to bring out like 3 old guys to hit a tee shot and be like, all right, let's play golf now. But the funny thing though is I saw like an amazing tweet, and I had to look it up myself to verify it. So Jack Nicklaus played his first Masters in 1959 as an amateur. In that tournament, he played with a guy named Fred McLeod, who was born in 1882, and he was playing in the Masters at 67, 77 years old. Like, that's just unfathomable to me. Like, he was literally playing with a guy that was like born basically not too long after the Civil War ended. It's just crazy. And that guy was actually the starter, and he played in the Masters up until like age 80. So just an incredible thing. Like, once you start going down the rabbit hole of like, I was going down the leaderboard of like the 1959 Masters and just like seeing, all right, like who's alive basically. And, sadly, there wasn't too many. It was basically just like Nicholas and Gary Player, Jackie Burke, and I think like one other guy. The rest of them sadly have passed away. But when I saw that, it just brought me down a rabbit hole, which I thought was pretty interesting to kind of see the golf history of certain things.
There's no doubt about it. John, that's really great. That's a really great trip down memory lane. I do want to say hi to Monster Murky. Welcome in to our chat. Good to see you again. I do want to also note that I'm going to be guest hosting a show on Mon's channel coming up next week. We'll tell you more about that a little later on. But let's go back to Andy and let's get your thoughts on the coverage. Anything you want to add, Andy?
Yeah, you should splice up Mike's breakdown on the app and the coverage for 2024 when Tommy asks and brings up again like his gripes with the coverage, and then just play exactly what Mike just said about 10 minutes ago, because it's just going to hold up. It's going to hold up for the end of time. Like, if you want to watch Fred Couples and Sandy Lyle and like Adrian Maronk, whatever his name is, and like Francesco Molinari, besides Maronk's relatives, like you can just curate your own like watch list of players. Like that's pretty cool. And yeah, the Saturday fiasco was well documented. I wonder how awful they screwed that up on Saturday led to them actually being able to broadcast that early window on Sunday morning, because I was actually surprised that they were actually like CBS was on the air at 5:30 or 5 a.m. out here for the conclusion of round 3. And then Nance was like, all right, like we'll see you in a couple hours. Like, watch my special with Tom Weiskopf or whatever, or whoever that
People he chooses for that
remembering
special.
the Masters with Jim Nance after round 4. But yeah, if you're watching the golf, you had your desktop and laptop all fired up for the featured groups and holes 4, 5, 6 and all that stuff. So I think the coverage was pretty good. I'm glad all of us were on the same page with Vern Lundquist. He definitely was a little more sharp this year, so that's a welcome surprise. That was a surprise. Yeah, that was a surprise or disappointment. Yeah, that was a surprise, a pleasant surprise. Vern was with it. To John's point about Immelman, yeah, I don't think he like added a ton to the broadcast. He didn't take away from the broadcast. I think he'll get better. Yeah, he was just kind of there. He was a complimentary addition to the broadcast. He didn't really do much for me in either direction. Um, but big picture wise, one of my pet peeves, and these guys know because they watch the golf every weekend, and it's just real. It's a first world frustration when you've committed like 2 hours to watching Saturday or Sunday Golf Channel coverage. Let's say it's the LA Open or something. In that transition from Golf Channel to CBS or Golf Channel to NBC, it's literally like a 20-minute window where you miss that 20-minute stretch of real golf, and then or Dan Hicks has to like set it up, and you alienate the original audience that had watched the Golf Channel, for the previous 2-3 hours, and it's like we've already seen this. We just saw this actually, and that's just kind of annoying. Obviously, that it doesn't matter. That's not a factor with the Masters per se. But one thing I did notice on Sunday especially is like if you were watching like either the featured group, like the Scheffler featured group, or you're watching holes 4, 5, and 6, some of the live shots you'd see on the alternate feeds on the Masters app or the Masters website. And then it would be like a good 5 minutes where like Catalan or Ian Baker Finch would show the shot on the CBS broadcast. And, I'm just quibbling just to quibble, but I mean, that's going to happen, because CBS, you can only show one shot at a time, and Nance and the producers are trying to orchestrate all that because there's so much stuff going on the golf course, obviously. But there were a lot more pros than cons this year, if we're gonna be completely objective about it. But that's the Saturday. Saturday was a huge miss. Saturday was a huge miss. I saw Mike's tweet about like we're not gonna see the leaders until like the 4th hole. And I think like the pace of play was so bad, it might not have even been like the 5th hole. But all that to say, yeah, they'll have to refurbish like that for future reference.
Well, I really appreciate all your thoughts on the coverage. There definitely was a lot to unpack, so it's great to hear your all's perspectives on it. And that's pretty much it for the Masters. I don't think there are any other angles for me to really get into. But Mike, I mean, if you want to quickly share what's coming up, as you mentioned earlier, one of your favorite courses, RBC Heritage, coming up in South Carolina. So tell us a little bit about what's coming up in the near future.
Yeah, so an interesting wrinkle is that the RBC Heritage this year, at least, is a designated event, which I understand it's within driving distance of Augusta National, but they maybe should have thought about moving New Orleans event to this week and maybe moving the Heritage back another week, because you got like Jordan Spieth saying, "I'm dead tired." Rory just withdrew. I don't think you're going to get much at all from Rahm this week. He might be massively hungover in every round he plays. But listen, on the flip side, we're going to see the top players in the world at a course that is very different from most of the courses you'll see on the PGA Tour, in that it really has a way of neutralizing power. You got to play a lot of different shots, under limbs, over limbs, left, right, curve them what way or whatever. And yeah, it could result in an interesting winner, someone who is maybe not one of the top players in the world, even though they'll all be here. Well, top players in the world are all here. Davis Love is also here too, which
isn't Furyk in the mix again?
I believe so too. It's something where
Ernie Els is in the field too. I had no idea how he got into this field or why, but he is playing.
It's because this year they have something with the designated events where all the top players can get in if they want, but they still have this criteria that would exist as if it were still a normal tournament. So like Davis Love is in because he won this event 5 times. I'm sure Ernie Els won it. Furyk definitely won it. So that's why. But I don't know why they don't just cap it at however many people and say, yeah, sorry, guys. You want to play a Champions Tour event? Go ahead. When it's not a designated event, sure enough, come back here. But yeah, it's a really good course, top 100 in the U.S., and the finish is great, 16, 17, and 18 along the water. So you get some pretty sights, some views of alligators meandering about, and much more big names than you would normally see here. And also, to just make this all about me for a second, I am going to Hilton Head in 2 months, and I'm doing it. I am going to play Harbor Town. I've never actually played it before. They want $335 for it, but you know what? You only live once, and honestly, that is not that crazy for a course that's been on the PGA Tour for 50 years. I'll bite the bullet and have a few simple meals of rice and like some chopped meat for a while. I am going to play this course. I'm sure my score will not be very well, but it will not be very good. But it'll be a good time.
I think it's a great call, Mike. And that's only half the price of what it would cost, and maybe even less than half the price than it would cost to do Pebble Beach. So I think it's a great. It's not.
Well, Dave, Pebble Beach is like $750, but it's not really $750. It's like $750, and you got to stay at the lodge for like 2 nights or something like that. So that's going to cost you a couple grand.
Wow,
if you want to play there.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. So have a great round once you get to there. That sounds great. Let's go to John. I mean, now we can just kind of talk about whatever. So, John, anything else you want to bring up as far as golf or anything else?
I'll talk a little bit about the schedule, but before I do that, Mike, did you make any bets this week for any outright winners? Because I made a couple.
I have not yet, John. I still actually got to set my lineup for your pool, and when I do that, I will give it a thought, and I'll throw in 1 or 2 before the action starts tomorrow morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get a couple in there. But I bet Cam Young. I think, like I said, it's trending for him to have a win. I think he should have won the match play a few weeks ago. I was really disappointed he lost to Sam Burns in that final match. And then getting Webb Simpson's caddy, Paul Tesori, has been a huge addition to his game. And if you remember, Webb Simpson dominated this course, so he can only give Young some good knowledge here to how to play this. And his approach game is just fantastic. So he can club down off the tee, stick it on his approach, and his putting's been on fire. So I bet Cam Young. And I also bet, stupidly, I bet Xander Schauffele. I just thought his odds of 28-1 were too high. So those are the 2 bets I made for this week. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, great tournament. I do agree that I think they should have reshuffled the schedule to maybe give these guys a little bit of a rest after the Masters if you're going to make this a designated event. Now, clearly, they weren't going to make New Orleans a designated event with the team scenario. They weren't going to make Mexico a designated event, and those are the next 2 weeks after this. So no one's going to play Mexico. The team event might have a little juice because the guys kind of pairing up with each other, but whatever. They weren't going to make either of those the designated events. And I believe the first week in May is Wells Fargo, and I think that's also a designated event. So that would have been a good, if they had done New Orleans this week and then put RBC, and then you have another week off, and then you have the next designated event. I think that would have been a nice schedule, but who knows? It's all going to be blown up next year anyway. So maybe the RBC Heritage will be in a different spot, or it might not even be designated next year. I think they're going to move it around. So better enjoy it this year. That's why next month, in 2 months, the Travelers, the tournament right near my house, is a designated event this year. So you better believe I got the club seats on the 18th hole, so I can enjoy the best golfers in the world come through on Friday afternoon and get my money's worth for that tournament. But 2 designated events in the next month before the next major, so it's going to be interesting, like always. And I would tend to agree. I don't think you're going to see the guys who really contended in the Masters to be up there, and just the course itself lends it to be kind of maybe an oddball winner. So we'll see. It's always a great, if I remember anything from this tournament the past 4 or 5 years, it's always a great finish on Sunday. So shouldn't be any different this week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And the visuals, as Mike was talking about, were absolutely fantastic. So, pretty good stuff all around. Let's welcome Stuart Hayek into the chat. It's good to see you. Stuart Hayek is very dialed into the NHL playoffs, which have yet to start, which I am mystified by. We talked about that earlier, Mike. But why?
New York Islanders clinched earlier tonight, Dave.
Oh, they did? Okay.
All the playoff teams are set. We still got some seeding stuff to figure
Okay.
out. We still have to figure out if there's going to be a big Devils Rangers game that will be decided, or Devils Rangers series that'll be decided tomorrow. But yeah, all the teams are now set.
That's good to see. Yeah, again, I feel like it's cool to see everything set though. That's great. So now I don't know what you're gonna do with the next like 2 games. I think there's one more full slate on Thursday, right? That's like the last full 14 whatever game schedule. And then there's like 2 games the next day, and then that's it. That's the season. So we'll see how it goes. Mike, how much time would you have to stay on with us if you want to get into any hockey after the golf stuff?
Not tonight, Dave. I have not prepped to talk about any more than like Devils Rangers I could give you, but anything else I'd be scrambling and spinning my wheels. So.
No worries.
Full disclosure.
No worries, my friend. Well, I'm excited for him for sure. So let's give it to Andy. Anything else on your mind as far as golf or anything else?
What, Mike doesn't have the trials and tribulations of the Colorado Avalanche? No, just kidding. Because I think they're peaking at the right time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I know they've had some injuries back and forth. But well, I'll say this about the tournaments and the schedule changes that John alluded to, and one little complaint that I have, and I think I don't know, people might agree, they might not, but so next year the Houston Open, which should never have moved the venue to the course that was near the airport, but they had to do that. They lost a sponsor, but the Houston Open is moving back to the spring in 2024. It's going to take the slot of the now retired match play event in Austin. So it will be 2 weeks before Augusta. So it'll still be a Texas swing. It'll be Houston, San Antonio before Augusta. And, I think the purse will be increased. So Houstonians are excited that they're getting their, a time slot that was more in line of what it traditionally was all those years ago. The second thing I would say, is, I'm tailing John's pick. I might do top 10. I don't know if I have the balls to do Young to win it all, but maybe top 10. You maybe get I'm guessing that's like minus 110 to win 100 or whatever it is. But I'll take a look. I kind of wish and I kind of hope that they move the PGA tournament back to like the late summer. I don't know. I just feel like the Sawgrass event in March, I just feel like it gets buried in March. I know it's been in March, and then they moved it Mother's Day weekend, but they moved it back to March. But last year you had all those weather delays and the Monday finish, and I feel like it gets buried in the midst of conference tournament weekend with all the college basketball, and you're not really paying attention to, what's going on in Sawgrass. And then the way the majors are, it's just so compact. Like next month, Mike's going to be up in Rochester. Could be bad. I don't know what the weather's going to be like in Rochester in May. And then you have LA in June. And then in July, the major season's all over. And obviously it's exciting. I just feel like it's too truncated, too fast. And I know they don't want to have the FedEx tournaments interfere with NFL season, but I don't know. I just feel like the major season is it's too fast. And I know they want to have a big event in March, April, May, June, July, but I don't know. I feel like the Players' Championship in March just doesn't get any sort of juice like it would had it been in Mother's Day weekend. And I know in Mother's Day weekend they're competing with NHL and NBA playoffs, but I don't know. I just feel like that's more of a natural rhythm for golf and golf weather. But maybe I'm on Mars with that take, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think what I'm feeling with the PGA is that the luster of it being in a different month has worn off for me too. Because as you mentioned, trying to find time for it when you know you've got like a great NHL game coming up at the same time, and at that point, it's like you're not even in the first round anymore. You're in the second round or the third round. So it's like, yeah, how do you find time to watch this? Like you've got these great battles and here, and I realize that PJ's during the day and everything, but it's just kind of tough to find time to watch things like that. So I see your points on that for sure, Andy. But it is what it is. Like you said, if you put it back in August, then you worry about the playoff scenario and how the golf playoff scenario and how that's going to be affected. So I don't know. But I certainly vibe with your opinion. Okay, let's just go to final thoughts. Mike, we'll start with you, and if you want to comment on that too, feel free.
Yeah, I share much of the same sentiment as Andy there. I think it was last year that I said, what I don't think would ever actually happen, but what I thought could be a novel solution is some years you play it in May and some years you play it in August. Like, for instance, this year, I think makes a lot more sense to play it in Rochester, New York, where you could have some cool mornings, and apparently the spring up there is somewhat notoriously rainy. It would probably make more sense to play an event in Rochester, New York in August. And last year, Southern Hills, Tulsa, Oklahoma, you would not want to be playing that in August. And I think that would just give the PGA a certain amount of flexibility to really maximize the amount of great courses they can go to and sort of up their profile. Like, they can't ever go to Whistling Straits again. You can't have that course ready to go in May. In fact, when Whistling Straits was built, the U.S. Open was wanted to have an event there, and Pete Dye flat out went to the USGA and said, "Listen, you guys are not going to be able to control the conditions there in June the way you're going to need to be able to. So maybe hold off a little bit." So I don't know. They wouldn't do that, but I think that would work. But it's a very valid point. What the hell is going on in late August? You're waiting for college football to start. You're waiting for the NFL to start. The baseball picture has started to play itself out. You're getting an idea of who's in it, who's not. In May, like Andy said, NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs. It's enough baseballs happen that members of the fan base are panicking and screaming "clean house." So there's a lot going on, and golf has to compete with that. So yeah, it's a valid point.
And it's like that's the other tradition. Unlike somebody else wrote that, that's the other tradition, unlike any other fan base panicking after a month. It's great, John. I'll give it to you for final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it or leave it either way. Like, I'm fine with the schedule as is. If they want to adjust it to August, I like the hybrid approach. Definitely, I don't think the PGA is smart enough to do that, but I think they should consider it. Just for nostalgic purposes, like growing up, it was just like, oh, it's like, you're going on summer vacation in August, and like the PGA Championship is there. It's just like, I don't know, just one of those things. I kind of wish for that back again, but I can't go wrong with either. I do like the idea of like a big tournament in every month, even if the FedEx Cup you don't consider it a quote big tournament. I mean, you're still getting the top players in the world, the top players from the year, together for a couple of weeks stretch. So. We'll see. I mean, the PGA is definitely obviously open to change. I mean, they're like blowing up everything with this new designated event situation. So we'll see how it plays out in the next year or so. It'll be interesting to track. And yeah, how about my UConn Huskies though? Just had to get that plug in.
I love it.
For some college basketball championship. Yeah, it was definitely an exciting times. I had to went across state lines to make a few bets. So definitely. We cashed in on that over the last weekend.
So just to expound on that, like, when did you get them at? Did you get them live to win the championship at some point around the week 16? Because you would have had some good. I think you would have had some decent odds on it.
No, unfortunately, I only got to bet the final four games. But what happened was I went to the casino in Springfield, Mass, and they had a promotion where if you were there that day, all you had to do was sign up for the BetMGM app in Massachusetts, and I got eight $50 free bets, and I did them on all Masters outrights. And of course, like it's not, I wouldn't have bet the top three with my own money, but hey, it's free money. Like I'm going to bet the favorites. So I ended up taking one on Jon Rahm. So I made a little money on him winning. So we will definitely take that hit. So that was definitely worth it. But yeah, I only bet the final four games when I was there. And then I had them like in a pool, not the one that I do, of course, a different pool. I won a little bit of money for them winning it all, so it was still profitable. And obviously, seeing your team win their fifth championship, I mean that's the priceless thing of it all. So it was definitely good times for sure.
Oh, absolutely. What a great win for UConn, though. Big props to their team. Just a good, solid, good team. And it was really an impressive tournament run for them. Absolutely. Great for the Big East, too. Andy, let's give it to you for final thoughts.
So John, you got to go back to Springfield to cash in that ticket at some point, yeah?
No, actually, so those free bets were on the app, so I can withdraw that money at any time. You don't have to be in the state to withdraw, so I can do that. But I think I might leave some in because I'm going to be doing a couple days with the family up at my usual, or they usually go to like Salisbury, Hampton, and I can bet on the app there. So I might leave a few dollars in for when I do that. But the tickets that I bet that day, I have to go back and cash at some point. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, nice job there. I can't believe Washington has such archaic rules with the legalized gambling, but that's neither here nor there. Final thoughts. Yeah, I mean, Mike's idea makes so much sense. Like with the hybrid model, yeah, the PGA probably wouldn't do it. Yeah, it opens up your portfolio for different courses. I just make it happen, Mike. Send some letters, write letters. That'd be cool. But no, this is a great time of year. I don't know who's going to win the Stanley Cup playoffs or the NBA playoffs, but when it's all over, it'll be summertime. So I'm getting into these play. You know, it's not like Miami or Chicago is going to beat Milwaukee, or the Pelicans or the Thunder are going to beat Denver or whoever. But it's fun. It's extra games to watch and gamble on. It's baseball season is just barely started. Every team's got 11 to 13 games under their belt. It's still I know it's nice weather out in the Northeast, so that's good for you guys out there. It's a little cold today, but yeah, we're getting closer to summer, and yeah, we're in the guts of golf season. So enjoy it. Enjoy these elevated events. Enjoy the gambling. Best of luck. Good luck, Mike. When you go out there in a couple months, hit some nice shots out there for us.
Absolutely. And here's a quick question before I say goodnight, Andy. Do you see more juice in the play-in games than you do with the first round? Because I do. I think these play-in games have been fun.
I mean, just for the sheer, just because of the margins of the teams, the separation of the teams competing are probably a little closer than like the 2-7 and the 1-8 games. Now I'm in and out of the clouds with the NBA regular season, and Dave, you probably can agree. You probably follow it out of everyone on this program right now. The biggest issue with betting on NBA is like these star players are like game time decisions, and you gotta look all day long. Next thing you know is Murray and the Joker out for Denver. Jimmy Butler and Lowry out for the Heat, or everyone from the Warriors is out. So it's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah, and sometimes these teams like last year, for example, like Milwaukee, did not go full bore to get home court advantage, and it kind of bit them in the ass against the Celtics. So it's just hard. The Kings have been a good story in the NBA, but they're underdogs against the Warriors because the Warriors have so much equity from the past, and they, the books would be the Warriors are going to be the Warriors come playoff time, and the Kings are just entering uncharted territory. So it'll be fun. Like a lot of people are really high on that Kings Warriors series, and a lot of people are into that Knicks Cavs series.
Yeah.
So yeah, count me in. I'll be on board.
Cool. Yeah, same here. So it should be really fun. And we'll get, I think, I'll be following along too. Just looking for value as we go through these weeks, and same for the NHL. So, fellas, this has been great again. It's nice to recap the Masters with you again as we start another year of golf coverage. Mike, John, Andy, it's thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend and good luck on your scenarios. Enjoy your trip, Mike, and congrats, John, and congrats, Andy, too, on your pool. That's pretty cool. I'll see you around. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Good to see you guys.
All right, take care, fellas. Take care, everybody. Well, that's our panel. Mike in North Jersey, John in Connecticut, and Andy in Seattle. Really, really great to see them all back here again. And that's our podcast. Those of you on Twitch are going to stay on for a little bit longer. We'll tell you what's coming up on the Sandwich Show elsewhere. But for those of you on our podcast, thank you so much for listening again. You can catch me at Jillian Hayek's channel on Saturday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on Twitch. So look for Jillian Hayek, Hayek, Jillian Hayek on Twitch. And we're going to play a mini golf tournament. It's not going to be quite the same stature as the Masters, but we're going to have nevertheless a very heated tournament. And it should be really fun. And we play a game called Golf with Friends, and it's really wild. So check us out over there at Jillian Hayek on Saturday. If you're listening on the podcast, just look for Jillian at twitch.tv/Jillian Hayek. Again, Hayek. And if you're in our chat tonight on Twitch, here is the link to Jillian's channel. Give her a follow so that and it's Jillian with 2 L's too. So GILLIAN HAYEK. And then on Monday, we'll be hanging out with the Bylines over on Twitch for the latest Sandwich Q&A. And I will also be guest hosting a show at Monster Murky during that same week. So we'll tell you more about that over on Sandwich Discord. So for those of you who've been listening to us on the podcast, thank you again. Have a great rest of your night. And we will see you next time. But all the best, and thanks again for your support. So if you missed any part of it, of course, check our replays over on Twitch or on YouTube at Sandwich Sports. And for everybody here, we're gonna stay on the chat. We're not going anywhere. I'm just gonna quickly switch the scene over so that we can go back to our non-sport scenes. That way we can do point redeems and things like that. So stay with us. We are going no place. We will restart the stream in just a second or two, and we'll keep chatting for a few minutes and then go ahead and raid out after that. So thanks again for hanging out with us on the sports side. We'll see. Stay with us. We'll restart the stream in just a second.